Winter is around the corner, time is getting short, so we better go hunt for a spot where we can find some more.
So far, Tony's mined just over 2,000 ounces of gold.
The wind is around the corner, and time has reversed, so we should look for a place where we can find even more. So far, Tony's ghost only has over 2,000 tons of gold. Ambition can be motivating, but if it crosses a certain line, it can have irreversible consequences. The story of Tony Beets and his son Mike Beets has become a chilling warning for all those who seek fame at any cost. It began not with a dramatic robbery or a shocking discovery, but with rumors and subtle suspicions from a rival miner. But these quiet allegations quickly sparked a 3-year investigation that uncovered a criminal conspiracy whose scope dwarfed any plot previously depicted on the popular reality TV show. And the final chapter wasn't written by the producers. It was written in the courtroom, where the judge and jury delivered a verdict that confirmed the darkest rumors. The Beets dynasty was at an end, the downfall of the Viking kings, in a surprising turn of events that rocked both the reality TV world and the professional mining industry. Tony Beets and his son Mike were sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict, delivered in a packed courtroom in the Yukon Territory, marked a somber and dramatic end to the careers of the gold rush stars. Tony once said, "Because you want to keep going, you have to keep mining to get to the gold." This attitude helped make the father-son duo, known for their thick Dutch accents, harsh language, and uncompromising work ethic, household names. But this drive couldn't protect them from the serious allegations they ultimately faced. It wasn't just about mistakes or failure to comply with regulations. The charges included widespread environmental violations, illegal claim jumping, fraudulent gold production reporting, and, most notably, a criminal conspiracy that the lead prosecutor described as unprecedented in modern mining history. There was a palpable silence in the courtroom. You could have heard a pin drop. All eyes were on Tony and Mike Beets, the once legendary duo now on trial. The judge looked them in the eye and, in a firm, measured voice, delivered the worst news of their lives, the deliberate and massive nature of their crimes. And because they showed no remorse, they would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Forever. Tony, the tough Viking boss, known to millions from television, stood there frozen. By 75, he didn't flinch when the verdict was announced. But then came the moment that finally broke him. The judge announced the same life sentence for his 35-year-old son, Mike. At that moment, Tony's hardened expression dissolved. His hard exterior gave way to something rough and real. Mike, on the other hand, looked as if he'd seen a ghost. His face turned pale. When reality hit him, his life as he knew it was over. Paradise Hill, mine, praised on television as a land of wealth and opportunity, was revealed in court to be the headquarters of a secret criminal organization founded on lies and destruction. What had once made them famous was now the very foundation of their downfall. But what shocked the public even more was the fact that it wasn't the police who uncovered the truth. The entire operation was thrown into disarray because of a single person. And the most surprising part? It was someone no one would have expected. At that time, the Beets family still owned several mining claims at the southern end of the valley, land that had always been considered productive but quiet. It was precisely at the border of this land that the situation began to change. The person who inadvertently set the entire chain of events in motion was none other than her longtime rival, Parker Schnabel. What made this even more incredible was their shared past. Years earlier, Tony Beets himself had mentored Parker and taught him many of the core skills he would later use to build his own successful gold mining company. For a while, Tony had considered Parker almost like a protege, but over time, the student became a competitor. By pure coincidence, Parker's new business was located right next to the Beets' current location. This proximity allowed him to observe unusual activity, initially small things, inconsistencies that made no sense. These events didn't happen in daylight, when the cameras were rolling and everything was staged for television. Instead, they occurred late into the night, long after the crew had packed up and left. What exactly happened under cover of darkness? Parker testified in court that he noticed disturbing signs, things that gave rise to serious concern. One of the most disturbing incidents he described was thick, dark water flowing from the Beets mine across the boundary onto his property. Water that was clearly not a natural drain. This happened several times, but he particularly remembered one incident around 30 a.m. This sight disturbed him so much that he took action. Parker realized it wasn't muddy water from normal operations, collected samples, and sent them for laboratory testing. The results were extremely disturbing. The water was contaminated with highly toxic substances, including mercury and several industrial chemicals that are strictly prohibited in modern mining due to their dangerous effects on the environment and public health. Parker realized this was not due to accidental runoff or mismanagement. It was intentional. The contamination was not only harmful but also illegal, suggesting that Beets' operation was engaging in practices aimed at extracting gold at any cost, regardless of legality or environmental impact. In his deposition, Parker stated that despite his prior respect for Tony, he felt legally and morally obligated to report what he had seen. This decision to inform the authorities was the first step in a chain reaction that ultimately led to the collapse of the Beets mining empire. What began as a private observation evolved into a comprehensive federal investigation. During the process, it became clear that the televised version of events represented only a glossed-over, whitewashed fragment of a much larger and more disturbing reality. The courtroom quickly transformed into a surreal scene, filled with familiar faces from the television series Gold Rush. People who had once been part of a televised mining drama now appeared as key witnesses in a major criminal case. One of the most important statements came from Rick Ness, another well-known miner who had worked closely with the Beets crew and Parker over the years. Rick Ness's report added an important layer to the investigation. His testimony substantiated the existence of what prosecutors called a dual mining strategy. According to Ness, Tony Beets pursued two distinct approaches, one for the public and television audience, the other in secret, with the sole goal of maximizing gold production by any means necessary. In court, Ness appeared visibly uncomfortable. He was now testifying against people he had previously worked with. He told the jury that Tony had made it clear that there were certain things that should never be filmed, and that discussing them outside the crew could have serious consequences. The implication was clear. There was a system in place to conceal illegal or unethical behavior from regulators and the public. Ness's detailed testimony helped prosecutors make sense of the situation. They used his testimony, environmental data, surveillance recordings, and other witness testimony to paint a picture of deliberate deception, of a gold mining company with two faces, one for the cameras and one for profit. To television audiences, the Beets mining operation appeared to be a compliant, organized, efficient, and legal operation. Every scene was carefully staged to portray a reputable, hard-working family business. But according to trial testimony, this public image showed only one side of the coin. When the cameras stopped and the production crew left the site, a completely different mining method emerged. One that violated all rules and caused significant damage to both the land and the law. This contradiction was reinforced by the testimony of Christo Doyle, an executive producer on Gold Rush, Derceria, which made the Beets family famous. During cross-examination, Doyle was asked how much control the production crew had during the actual mining operations. Under oath, he admitted that most of the miners' work was never filmed. Gold Rush films about 15% of the actual mining season. He explained, "We have no way to monitor what happens the remaining 85% of the time. We relied entirely on the integrity of our miners and their willingness to comply with local environmental and safety regulations." The prosecution used this testimony to argue that the Beets family deliberately exploited this loophole. Because they knew when and how they were being filmed, they were able to present the TV crew with a sleek, legal image while engaging in illegal practices behind the scenes. Doyle also acknowledged the production's weaknesses. "It's not that I don't like Sir Tony showing up down here, but that he always overlooks major advances to ruin you. Nobody wants to bust their ass and be bullied for it." This highlighted the tension between actual mining and its portrayal for entertainment purposes. Several members of the Gold Rush production team were called as witnesses. Some claimed they had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. Others, however, admitted to having secretly harbored suspicions but not speaking out. Several producers and crew members stated that they had observed inconsistencies such as missing inventory, unexplained night shifts, or sudden changes in work schedules, but had not reported them because they feared jeopardizing the success of the series or their own jobs. This led to a culture of silence. As prosecutors put it, unethical and illegal practices were able to flourish unhindered simply because no one had the authority or incentive to investigate further. The financial success of the series and the fame of the Beets family had essentially created a massive blind spot. The strategy was simple: operate within the law when the cameras were running, and use any means necessary to extract as much gold as possible when the cameras were off, regardless of environmental damage or legal restrictions. However, the deception went beyond a mere strategy of shared mining. It reached deeper, to the core of the Beets family structure itself. One of the most dramatic and unexpected moments of the entire trial came from a witness who had been part of the family from the beginning, Minnie Beets. As Tony's wife of over 4 decades, and the longtime accountant and financial manager for the family's business affairs, Minnie had played a central role behind the scenes for years. Her name was rarely mentioned publicly, yet she was involved in every aspect of their mining business. In a courtroom packed with media and legal observers, Minnie shocked everyone by agreeing to testify against her husband and son in exchange for complete immunity from prosecution. Her decision was both legally significant and personally devastating. She handed over years of financial records that had previously been withheld from authorities. These documents formed the backbone of the prosecution's closing arguments. According to her detailed testimony, the family had developed a long-term scheme to underreport their gold yields to regulators. By concealing large portions of their actual production, they were able to evade tax and environmental reporting requirements. But Minnie went even further. She presented evidence of how this unreported gold was funneled through informal and illegal distribution channels, the so-called black market, where it was exchanged for cash and used to finance private purchases and offshore accounts. In total, millions of dollars in proceeds were concealed from both the government and the show's producers. Her testimony was concise and well-structured, including spreadsheets, ledgers, and internal correspondence. This was a fatal blow for the prosecution. They confirmed that the illegal operation was not just about environmental violations, but part of a larger financial fraud. Minnie's decision to turn against her own family caused a deep rift. According to court documents and media coverage following the verdict, the Beets family was torn apart. Daughters Monica and Bianca Beets, both regular Gold Rush performers, attended the verdict. In a written statement submitted through their legal counsel, they expressed their deep sadness and disappointment over the evidence presented against their father and brother. They did not testify at the trial, but their presence in the courtroom was closely observed. After the verdict, Monica and Bianca left the courthouse through a side entrance to avoid the press. Observers described their behavior as visibly distressed. They refused to answer questions and made no further public statements. Kevin Beets, another of Tony's sons who also appeared on the show, was not charged in the case. His whereabouts during the trial were not disclosed, and he did not appear in court. Evidence showed that he had no involvement in the decisions regarding the illegal practices. He and his sisters expressed their shock and asked for privacy. The image of the close-knit, tough family clan that was so central to the Gold Rush brand was forever shattered. The woman who kept the books and knew every dollar that came in and went out had chosen to expose the truth rather than protect the lies. Her testimony revealed that the foundation of the Beets empire was not just fragile, but completely rotten from the inside out. And as the family's secrets came to light, the incredible extent of the damage they had caused also became clear. The toxic soil we discovered went far beyond mere profit maximization. Lead prosecutor Catherine White stated during the trial that the evidence revealed a deliberate and sustained effort to circumvent virtually every environmental protection regulation in the area. The result, she explained, is damage that experts say will take decades and millions of dollars to repair. The prosecution presented a striking and disturbing collection of environmental evidence. They showed the jury satellite images taken over several years. The before images depicted the pristine Yukon wilderness. Aftermath images of the areas mined by the Beets operation showed a scarred and devastated landscape. Massive, unauthorized diversions of rivers and streams occurred, and protected wetlands were completely destroyed. These were not accidents. These were carefully planned operations aimed at getting to the gold as quickly as possible, without regard for the long-term consequences. Environmental scientists reported on the chemical desert left behind by the Beets crew, presenting shocking results from soil and water samples. Some areas were contaminated with mercury and other dangerous heavy metals in quantities more than 200 times higher than permitted limits. This wasn't just a violation. It was blatant soil poisoning. Mercury is a toxic substance used in illegal gold mining processes. Measured levels indicate that it was used frequently and in large quantities. A shocking case has turned the world of the gold rush upside down. The story of Tony and Mike Beets ended not with a mountain of gold, but with a life sentence in prison. And the details of how they got there are truly harrowing. Their search for gold exacted a high price and left behind a poisoned and devastated landscape. The investigation, which lasted 3 long years, revealed that the beautiful landscape on television hid a dark secret. The Beets treated the Yukon like their own garbage can. The court heard that dangerous chemicals like mercury were used, poisoning the soil at levels more than 200 times higher than permitted. Cleanup of this toxic pollution will take decades. Her web of lies not only damaged the soil but also deceived her fellow miners. Many other Gold Rush stars testified during the trial, and their stories painted a grim picture. Todd Hoffman suspected that Tony had called his crew amateurs because they followed the rules, while the Beets didn't, Dave Turan explained in court. He suspected the Beets had secretly mined on his land and stolen his gold when no one was looking. Another miner, Fred Lewis, recalled Tony Beets' boast. He doesn't have to follow the stupid rules because he knows how to get around them. I don't give a shit if someone dies. I just don't want to go to jail because they weren't careful. When I told them to get out of there, the defense argued that Tony Beets was just playing a role for television. They claimed he was a hard-boiled TV star and not a real criminal. But that argument fell apart when the prosecution presented its most compelling piece of evidence: secret audio recordings. The tapes captured Tony explaining to his son Mike exactly how to break the law and hide it from inspectors. He even explained to him when best to use illegal chemicals to avoid being caught. The footage proved that it wasn't an act, but a planned criminal action. The jury quickly found them guilty. As he was led away in handcuffs, Tony Beets looked out into the crowd and said, "The Viking has fallen." His empire was gone. The story of Tony and Mike Beets is a haunting reminder that reality is often very different from what we see on television. Their empire collapsed, leaving behind a toxic legacy. What do you think this means for the future of reality TV? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for deeper insights into the stories that matter.